Okay, so I wanted to make a quick video about the PlayStation Portal. I've been seeing a lot of people grab this device over the last week, and there's really two different opinions on the PlayStation Portal. You either love it or you hate it, and that's really simply because it's just not working properly for a lot of people. From what I've seen online, a lot of the disappointment for the PlayStation Portal seems to all link back to your network. Seems like a lot of people's networks aren't set up to take full advantage of the Portal, and because of that, it's just not meeting their expectations. Now, that's no fault of their own. I don't think that Sony is doing a good job at conveying all of the things that you need to have a good overall experience. They're really just giving you the minimal details and letting you figure out all the rest yourself, which has led to a bad experience for a lot of people. So what this video really is about is just trying to give you the lowdown on how you should properly set this up, because I think that's going to fix a lot of the problems out there. We'll also kind of do a quick review as well. You can skip to the tips if you want. I will have a timestamp below. But yeah. Now, I do have the PlayStation Portal. I've been playing it over the last couple of days, and it's been absolutely fantastic. When I say it's been nearly flawless, I absolutely mean that. And I think a lot of that really is just because the connection that I use. Your network needs to be properly set up. Keep in mind, though, that you will have a slight input lag. It's not super noticeable, but if you're playing a rhythm game or if you're playing an online competitive multiplayer game, I don't think the PlayStation Portal is necessarily the best way to play those games because that slight input lag. Now, I will say that I've only had this for a couple of days, so I do imagine, yeah, eventually I might have some issues. I just haven't so far. In fact, the PlayStation Portal is the best experience that I have ever had using a remote play device. Now, I actually like remote play. I have a lot of experience with it in the past. I actually bought the NVIDIA Shield Portable a long time ago. If you know what that is, I'll go and put a picture up on screen. But I played several games on the NVIDIA Shield Portable that way, including Bloodborne, and it was a fun overall experience. But the PlayStation Portal, it works so much better than that. Also, Chiaki. I hear a lot of people talk about Chiaki on platforms such as the Steam Deck. I have tried Chiaki, and I have had a terrible experience with Chiaki. It either just doesn't work as I set it up, it doesn't run smoothly, or there's some kind of update that just tears it all apart. This is a much better experience. You just turn it on and it works. Now, even with mobile phones, I hear a lot of people talk about just go ahead and use a mobile phone instead, but I despise using remote play on mobile. Not only do I get a ton of notifications on my phone, it takes me out of the experience, but on top of that, it's just cumbersome. I have a case on my phone, and in order to connect a controller, I have to take that case off. I have to connect the controller. Then I have to search for my PS5. It's just an annoying process, and the PlayStation Portal, it gets rid of all of that, and because it has the DualSense controller attached, that adds a whole extra layer to the remote play experience. So if you like the idea of playing your PlayStation games on a handheld, albeit it's going to be limited, but if you like that idea, then I do think that with the proper network, then you might be interested in the PlayStation Portal. Now, one game that I've been playing on the PlayStation Portal over the last few days is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. This game was originally made for the PSP years and years ago, and ironically, I can kind of play it on the new PSP now, and it feels very good on the Portal. You can feel the input lag at times, and that's going to be the most noticeable thing when you play on remote play. If you need to press buttons quickly and they need to be precise, you might notice that a little bit, but for the most part, this game feels and looks very nice on the Portal. Now, with that said, it's not a perfect device. The audio in specific is something that I am not a big fan of. It does not sound great, and my theory on this is they want to sell you those PlayStation Link devices. The PlayStation Pulse earbuds, that's going to come out at $200. Then you have the headset, and that's $150. It seems to me, because they are not including Bluetooth, that they want to push you to buy one of their first-party headsets. And, that's not a great thing, but that's really kind of my big gripe with the PlayStation Portal right now, and not necessarily the gameplay experience. Now, the audio, I don't think is so terrible that you can't live with it, but it's not great. The button placements are also kind of weird. So you have the volume buttons as well as the power buttons almost behind the tablet, which seems like a weird placement to me. And speaking of that power button, I have had issues actually turning on this device. I don't know if my Portal is faulty or if this is normal, but you have to hold the power button on for quite a while before it actually turns on, and there's no kind of feedback that it's actually turning on. It just doesn't feel smooth when you turn it on, so I have actually opted out to put this thing to sleep instead, and that's just a quick tap of the button. So yeah, those are kind of the pros and cons for the Portal, or at least that I have found so far. But now let's go ahead and focus on your network setup, because again, this is the most important thing for the PlayStation Portal. The PlayStation Portal needs your network to meet certain parameters to have a good overall experience, and I don't think that Sony has necessarily done a good job at letting their customers know all of the things to have that better overall experience. So unfortunately, there are a lot of people bring this thing home and they end up being disappointed because it's not meeting their expectations. This has not been a good experience for a lot of people, but I think a lot of that really does come down to your network, and hopefully we can fix some of that up, and hopefully this will be some help to you all out there. First off, you're going to need to have a good, stable internet. Now, I have a 1 gigabyte connection, and I understand that not everybody is going to have that option, but really, PlayStation says that all you need, I believe they recommend 15 megabits down and 5 up. I'll need to recheck that. I will post that on screen here in a second. But the better your internet connection, obviously, the better your experience is going to be. Now, I will say that when you first turn on this device, or at least from my experience and from what I've seen from other people online, when you first turn it on, the image will come off as very soft and fuzzy. But after it loads in, it looks pretty good. And even though it is downgrading games from 4K to 1080p, because it is on an 8-inch screen, that isn't the massive downgrade that you would think it is. It looks nice and crisp on this 8-inch screen. But the most important thing that you need to understand is that you need a 5 gigahertz router. This is an absolute must. Do not run this on a 2.4G router. That is not going to work very well. You're going to have a ton of problems. And in fact, even if you have a 5G router, there's still some caveats here. Most people, it seems like their routers have come from their ISP. And the routers that they give you typically aren't all that great, so preferably it is best to go out and get your own. Now, that's not necessarily ideal because they can be expensive, so maybe you don't want to go out of your way to get a router specifically for the Portal, and I can completely understand that. But if you are dead set on having the best connection for the Portal, it might be preferable to get your own router. I'm going to go ahead and drop a link in the description below to the specific router that I use personally. It has 3 different bands. It has a 2.4 band. It also has 5G as well as an extra gaming band. They say it's faster. Who knows? People have some conflicting opinions on that, but this router has been flawless for me with the PlayStation Portal, so I will drop a link in the description below. But beyond that, another problem that I see with people's routers is that they're using mesh routers. Now, what that means is that it has both 5G as well as 2.4, and depending on where you're located in your house, it'll kind of switch back and forth between the two. Now, that's supposed to be convenient, but I have heard some people claim that they're having some issues with their mesh routers. Now, other people say that it's working just fine, so it really seems like maybe not everybody is having that issue, but if you are on a mesh router and if you're having issues, maybe see if you can separate the two and see if that helps out with your connection at all. If that still doesn't work though, then maybe you can try a completely different router. Typically, they are going to be better than what your ISP will give you. Now, that might not always be the case, and you're going to need to do some research as well for what's going to fit your internet the best. Again, I will drop a link below to the router that I specifically use, but you might want to go in a different direction, and that's completely fine. But a router is going to be very important to the PlayStation Portal. And that's really the thing about this entire device. It's not that you're just buying a PlayStation Portal. You are going to have to rely on a good, stable network. You're going to need a good router that has access to 5G, and you're going to want to be able to connect to that very specifically. But if you have those things, then the PlayStation Portal is a very good experience, or at least it has been for me, because if it does work, it works wonderfully well. I mean, if anything else, I'll say that this is a niche device that becomes even more niche because it requires so many things to actually get it working properly. That is the last part that I want to kind of talk about, though, because who is this device actually for? That's a question that often comes up. I see so many people out there and they say, I don't understand who it's for. We already have devices that has remote play. But again, as I said before, I don't like using my mobile phone, and I do think that this works better than Chiaki. So in my situation, this is the best way for me to play my games remotely. And even though you can't take this out of your house, I do like to play on a handheld in a lot of different situations. As some of you all might know, I actually had a baby boy this year, and I'm away from my TV an awful lot. He sleeps on my chest a lot of times. So, I'm just rocking him in a chair, and he'll sleep on my chest. And, that's whenever I like to pick up a nice handheld device, whether it be the Nintendo Switch, the ROG Ally, the Steam Deck, or now with the PlayStation Portal, I have plenty of options to play all of these great games. So in my situation, this works very well. Or if you're somebody that has kids and you only have one TV to play your games and your kids are using your TV, well, then you can use this nice remote player and you can play your games that way. Or hey, maybe you just like playing your games in bed. A lot of times, that's how I wind my day down. As I lay down, I just play a game until I get tired and then I go to bed. So I think there's plenty of people who will like to play their games on a handheld despite not necessarily taking it outside. So if you're like that, then I think the PlayStation Portal, if you have a good network, again, that's going to be the important part, but if you have a good network, then I think the PlayStation Portal is actually a pretty solid device. Some flaws, as we talked about earlier, but still a pretty good device when it is working. Anyways, though, that's it for this video. Hopefully, it helps some of you all out there. If you are on the fence over this device and you're just looking for a review, hopefully I gave you enough detail about at least my experience. And also, if you were just looking for some tips to make it work better for you, hopefully this video came as some help at the very least. Anyways, though, until next time, peace out.